We're all busy people, and when you're busy, you tend to put off fun for later. We've certainly done that, prioritizing calls with sources or script writing over taking a relaxing break.
But one thing that helps us break that burnout-inducing habit is Best Fiends. This is a delightful mobile puzzle adventure game, and it's the perfect pastime to help you break out of the doldrums.
We are both obsessed with this game, which pits a squad of quirky, freedom-loving bugs against a horde of autocratic slugs. Whenever we have some downtime, like we're stuck in line or waiting on a call, or just taking a break after editing together an episode, we can knock out a level or two. We sometimes have to travel far and wide for our journalism, so it's nice to be able to play offline, even when we're in an area with iffy internet.
There's nothing better than getting on a roll and picking up tools to help in the quest to defeat the slugs. It's a nice mental break to take your mind off work and stress.
Anya is on level 995.
Kevin is on level 262. It's frankly getting embarrassing.
You've earned your fun time. Go to the App Store or Google Play to download Best Fiends for free. Plus, earn even more with $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
Content warning. This episode contains descriptions of murder and violence against women. We also preemptively apologize for any mispronunciations heard in the episode. In November, the night skies in Hawaii cloud over, then open up. It's not the rainiest month in the Aloha State, but it does mark the end of the hurricane season and the start of Ho'owilo, or winter, on the islands. So the rain was perhaps the least shocking part of Roger Rivera's story. The story he told police about what he saw and did in the early hours of the morning of November 20th, 2015. A noontime drizzle the day before had swelled into an ongoing downpour. By 3 a.m. on the 20th, the rain was splashing down the windows of the home Rivera shared with his wife in Kalihi, a neighborhood in Honolulu. That's when Rivera's 25-year-old son, June Lee Irorita, appeared.
June Lee had caused the family a lot of worry over the years. He was estranged from his parents at this point, a homeless addict hooked on crystal meth. And he'd had problems with women, too. He'd threatened a former girlfriend, scaring her to the point where she took out a restraining order against him.
But then, on that night in November, June Lee revealed to his drowsy parents that he'd just done something far, far worse.
The family rented an apartment in their basement to Helen Prestosa, a 39-year-old manager at a Jack in the Box on Kapiolani Boulevard. June Lee told his father that he'd just killed her and needed some help. His father went downstairs with June Lee and helped his son load the body of the murdered woman into the back of June Lee's pickup truck. Then he watched his son drive off into the storm. When Rivera shared this story with police a few months after Helen disappeared, we assume they must have thought they had a slam-dunk case against June Lee.
We can only guess about what they thought because the police and prosecutors who worked on this case would not talk with us.
A drug addict who's threatened violence against a woman is ratted out as a murderer by his own parents. Things don't get much clearer than that.
So it must have come as a shock to the public when Christian Enright, June Lee's attorney, stood up in court in 2019 and said not only that his client was innocent, but that the real murderer was Roger Rivera, that he'd made up the story implicating his own son to save himself.
But Enright's accusation was not a surprise to the prosecution. Here is Enright.
You don't get to sandbag him, you know? So I had told him, like, this is where my defense is going to be. This is what I'm going to say. I got up on the news and during my opening statement and said the evidence was going to point to his dad. And everybody thought I was nuts, including people that I worked with. They're like, well, you wrote a pretty big check there. Hope you can cash it.
Was this a desperate gambit to save his client? Or was it possible it was true? Could a father sacrifice his own troubled son just to escape a murder charge? Even if he tried, how could he fool the police and prosecutors? And what really happened to Helen Prestosa? My name is Anya Kane.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee.
And this is The Murder Sheet, a weekly true crime podcast.
Anya and I connected over the Burger Chef murders, a 1978 unsolved case involving the killings of 4 young restaurant employees.
Now we're looking to track restaurant homicides. To help us understand the patterns of these crimes, we created a spreadsheet of nearly 1,000 eatery-related killings, the Murder Sheet. We'll be drawing on that data throughout Season 1 to give you a deep dive into undercovered crimes.
We don't just rely on skimming the headlines. We dive into these cases to bring you in-depth coverage. We're the Murder Sheet, and this is Vanished in Kalihi. Helen Prestosa was last seen about 7 p.m. on November 19, 2015. The next day, when her girlfriend arrived to pick her up for work, she wasn't at home. And she didn't show up for her shift at a Honolulu Jack-in-the-Box restaurant, where she worked as a manager. Restaurant employees knew Miss Helen is a good boss with a loud laugh, reported local station KHON.
Helen's loved ones immediately became concerned. It wasn't like Helen to miss work or run off without telling anyone where she was going. Helen was gay and living with her girlfriend, who had just happened to be out on the night of November 19th. And she also had pressing health concerns. Helen was a cancer survivor, having fully recovered from a bout of breast cancer through surgery and chemo. But before she vanished, she developed bone cancer. She didn't want to let her family know how serious it was. She tried to take good care of herself, eating organic foods and adding more medication to her regimen.
Helen had grown up in the Philippines and helped to support her elderly parents back home. When she came to Hawaii, she moved to a neighborhood called Kalihi, an area which was predominantly Filipino. She rented the downstairs portion of a home. Roger Rivera and his family lived upstairs. He was sort of a de facto landlord to her, even though he did not own the property. The house actually belonged to his mother.
Roger's son, Junlee Irarita, did not live with his parents, and there is no evidence he ever met Helen. His father, on the other hand, was more than her landlord. He was also her employee. He was a cook at the same Jack-in-the-Box she managed.
So if you think about, the dynamic where, she's Roger Rivera, the defendant's father, she's his boss. But like I said earlier, he's a good, I think, 10 years older than her. And then there's also the fact that she was gay, when it comes, so there was that. That was always kind of an issue too, because I got the impression that they didn't necessarily approve of her lifestyle, especially Roger.
But there was another, more serious source of conflict between Roger Rivera and Helen Prestosa. Rivera allegedly tried to make some money by filing a bogus disability claim against Jack-in-the-Box.
I don't know if it's all that uncommon a hustle. And, I think because Jack-in-the-Box is a major corporation, people think that, you can defraud them. That's my sense of what was going on. I think it was related to some kind of slip and fall. But then, Helen Prestosa, the victim, wasn't buying it.
Not only did she not believe him, but she also let him know she planned to report him for filing a false claim. Rivera allegedly did not take kindly to that.
There was some big blowout between Roger, the defendant's father, between Roger and the victim, Helen. Like, shortly before that, they had some beef about the disability claim at home. Roger had confronted Helen, and she said, this is a work issue. You need to leave me alone. We can discuss this at work. And he didn't like that.
Not long afterwards, Helen vanished.
Everybody was saying that they had no idea what happened. They don't know what happened to Helen. They don't know anything about it. The police searched her apartment, and her roommate, her girlfriend, had been out playing cards and came home, and everything had been cleaned top to bottom. The place had been scrubbed down. When they did the luminol, you're familiar with luminol? It's to detect the presence of blood that's been cleaned up.
Right.
You've probably seen it on TV. Basically like a black light kind of thing. They spray this substance and then they hit it with a black light, and it showed that there had been blood everywhere. Like, clearly someone had been, assaulted grievously, if not murdered. And then it was all cleaned up.
Since the crime seems to have happened, or at the very least to have started, in Helen's apartment, the obvious question was, who could have gotten inside?
And the dad, who incidentally had access to the apartment because it was the bottom floor of their house. There was a staircase that was supposed to be locked up, but it wasn't. He could have had access to the apartment via the staircase. So essentially he let himself into the apartment. He knew that the girlfriend wasn't home because her car was gone. And, so he would have known that the coast was clear.
Roger Rivera had motive and opportunity. So, at the very beginning, the police did indeed look at him as a potential suspect. But that changed after he and his wife came in and told authorities that his son, Junlee Irorita, was the real killer. The couple claimed that all Rivera had done was help dispose of the body.
Junlee did not know Helen. He did not have a discernible motive to kill her. He could not have known when he showed up that night that her girlfriend would not be there. But he was a drug user with a rap sheet who had threatened a woman in the past. Because of that, he seemed like an ideal suspect to the investigators.
So the police took Rivera at his word.
To be fair, they ran him through a lie detector. I don't put any stock in lie detectors. I think that they're kind of just, the police can make them say whatever they want. That's why lie detectors aren't admissible, at least in Hawaii. They're just too subjective. But he did pass a lie detector, which was very convenient for the police, But also it was through an interpreter and so forth. And there's all sorts of research that says you can't trust that.
Let's take a quick break to share the promo for one of our favorite true crime podcasts, The Trail Went Cold with Robin Warder.
Hello everyone, this is Robin Warder, host of the true crime podcast, The Trail Went Cold. If you grew up watching the classic television show Unsolved Mysteries, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I profile a new unsolved murder or missing persons case and share all the baffling details. Afterward, I provide my own personal analysis and theories about what might have happened. This is a show for true crime buffs who are fascinated by cold cases and love to discuss them and pick them apart in an attempt to figure out the truth. So be sure to check out our podcast to learn about some truly bizarre unsolved mysteries where the trail went cold.
And now, back to the murder sheet.
A rather important witness also supported Rivera's story.
The mother backed up what the father was saying. In my opinion, it was half-hearted.
And perhaps she had another reason to lie. When Helen's girlfriend entered their apartment, she told Hawaii News Now that she was struck by the strong smell of an unfamiliar cleaning solution.
So the mother was a housekeeper at the hotels. That's a kind of a common occupation for Filipino immigrants. And this apartment, as I said before, had been cleaned top to bottom. So you'd have to believe, if you were, going to buy the prosecution's case, that Jun Lee showed up out of the blue for no real reason. He didn't know the woman. He didn't know the tenant, at all. Showed up out of the blue in the middle of the night in the pouring rain, somehow got into her apartment, but presumably he broke in somehow, murdered her in a brutal fashion because there was blood everywhere, and her remains showed that she was most likely bludgeoned. Loaded up the body, got it out to his truck, managed to clean the apartment from top to bottom, more or less spick and span, and then for some reason goes and wakes up his dad to say, I need help just to get the body from the ground into the pickup truck. The woman only weighed about 100 pounds, and Jun Lee's kind of a big guy. He's about 6'2", I think. I think he could have easily done it himself. And so did all this by himself, and, his parents basically covered up for him for weeks. It just didn't make the least bit of sense. It was obvious, at the very least, that more than one person was involved.
There seemed to be many avenues the police should have explored, things they should have tried to find out about concerning what happened between Roger Rivera and his wife and Helen Prestosa. But Enright says that's not what they did.
The police got this single-minded focus on the son. He checks all the boxes, and they just, to put blinders on, and didn't entertain the possibility. And they needed the dad as a witness. The case goes away if he's not credible. I can see from the detective's point of view why you wouldn't want to ask too many questions, because your case goes up in smoke, And then I mentioned earlier that detective had retired. The guy retired, handed it off to a rookie who wasn't about to question what the veteran was doing. And it was on the news. It was a high pub case. They found her body dumped on the side of the road. It's the kind of person that you'd think that it would merit, some closer attention. And then, if you ask, certain people would tell you that it was probably maybe because she was an immigrant, maybe because she was gay. I don't know. I don't know why it didn't rate, but it got real short shrift from the police.
There was another factor that could have influenced how this case was handled. The homicide detective who began looking into Helen Prestosa's disappearance and murder retired halfway through the investigation. The prosecutor on the case also retired right after trying Irarita.
When you can see the finish line, you've worked at the job for 30, 35 years. You've done a bunch of these murder investigations, a bunch of murder prosecutions. You just want to get this one in the books. You have a suspect. You have his dad and his mom testifying against him. It looks like a slam dunk. And you're just like, the detective was probably like, okay, he cracked the case, and he probably patted himself on the back and moved on. And then the prosecutor, same thing, it was his last prosecution. He probably thought it was going to be a lot easier than it turned out to be. And, you don't necessarily bring the same level of effort that you brought in your younger days.
And it also didn't help that Jun Lee wouldn't make much of an effort to help himself.
Now, the son never made a statement, never admitted it, never denied it, even to this day. Never said one way or another. He said he didn't do it, but he wouldn't say whether he was involved or what happened or anything. He was just kind of quiet about it. So, I suspected maybe he was taking the rap for his dad. It started to get real, just strange, frankly.
Let's take a quick break from the murder sheet to tell you about a podcast investigating yet another unforgettable crime. The Orange Tree is a 7-part series about a 2005 homicide that happened near the University of Texas at Austin. The murder of 21-year-old Jennifer Cave, who was shot, dismembered, and left in a bathtub at her friend Colton Petoniak's apartment, continues to haunt the area to this day.
Like the Burger Chef murders, this case features plenty of twists and turns, including Colton's flight to Mexico with another UT student, Laura Hall. Both were later convicted in connection with the crime. although Colton has continued to appeal his verdict and claim innocence. The business student turned convicted murderer now says that he doesn't even remember much about the night Jennifer died.
The Orange Tree is reported on and produced by Haley Butler and Tanu Thomas, who were both seniors at the University of Texas when they started this project. Together, Haley and Tanu strive to piece together this tragic story in an in-depth podcast that features audio from courtroom scenes and interrogation rooms, prison phone calls, and exclusive interviews with both the perpetrators and the victim's family. You can binge all 7 episodes of The Orange Tree today on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Digging into upsetting crimes can be stressful.
That's why we're so grateful for our sponsor, Tanasi. This company has created a full range of science-backed products to help you achieve calmness, relief, and rest. The secret is a CBD plus CBDA formula that's twice as good as CBD alone. Researchers found that the CBD plus CBDA formula was superior when it came to suppressing inflammation.
I love putting Tanasi's lotion on my hands and neck. It makes me feel more relaxed and is now a key part of my bedtime routine.
We've enjoyed trying out Tanasi's line of soft gels, lotions, and tinctures. We feel that since we've started, we've been having an easier time with falling asleep and with aches and pains.
We appreciate that Tanasi products are all third-party tested to ensure they're potent and pure, and we've loved our results.
We also love that Tanasi sticks by its products. If you try your Tanasi products for 30 days and you're not loving the results, they'll give you a full refund.
Go to Tanasi.com and use code MSHEET to get 50% off at checkout. That's TANASI.com to get 50% off your first order with promo code MSHEET. Statements regarding efficacy and safety have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, prevent, treat, or cure any disease.
There is nothing like listening to a true crime podcast late at night and then rushing to make sure all your doors and windows are locked. We've definitely been there.
But these days, we feel much less worried about our safety thanks to our Simply Safe home security system.
And the nice thing about Simply Safe is that they're flexible and affordable without compromising their service. At Simply Safe, your safety is the number one concern, but they're offering top-notch services for an affordable price. And our listeners will get a special deal on 40% off their advanced security system. Back when we lived in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, we could have really used this Simply Safe system. It doesn't require any drilling, so it's perfect for renters.
Today, we love being able to check into our system via an app on our phones. It's great to be able to monitor our crystal clear HD live streams of our security cameras. It makes us feel like we're taking charge of our own safety.
Don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off your order when you visit simplysafe.com/msheet today. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes. That's simplysafe.com/msheet. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
And now, back to the murder sheet. But where was Helen Prestosa? Around 2 years after she vanished, her loved ones learned the truth. In April of 2016, cleanup volunteers scaled Tantalus, the Oahu mountain that looms over Honolulu. The mountain was named for the mythological Greek king, who is cursed to be forever thirsty and hungry for offending the gods. But answers that had long eluded investigators would soon become apparent to the cluster of volunteers. Picking up trash on a steep slope, they came across the skeletal remains of a woman. In March 2017, investigators announced that the remains belonged to Helen Prestosa. She had been badly beaten. Her body had fractures to the neck, chest, and face. She had been wrapped up in a sheet that also contained some items that had gone missing from her apartment. Those objects included a pillow, a pillowcase, a blanket, a television remote, a shoe, an iron, and a cell phone cover, according to Nelson Duransiang's 2019 report for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. If you're interested in reading more about this case, you can access a full list of our sources in our show notes.
By this point, June Lee had already been indicted by a grand jury. His trial began in 2019, and one of the biggest surprises of the case lay just ahead.
So we go to trial, and come to find out that, the prosecutors hadn't disclosed this, that the dad was a psychotic, mentally ill, and had been hospitalized as recently as the year before for having violent psychotic episodes.
This, of course, was the prosecution's star witness, and once he took the stand, it only took about 10 or 15 minutes before it became clear to everyone that there was something very, very wrong with Roger Rivera.
He would take, so we're talking very preliminary questions, like, what's your name? How old are you? Kind of laying, just sort of introducing him to the jury. And the prosecutor, say your name for the jury, and there'd be like a long pause where he's just kind of staring at the jury, or staring at the defendant, or kind of staring off into space, and then he'd answer the question, Roger Rivera. That went on for a little while, about 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden he started kind of twitching and kind of convulsing, and then he started like moaning very loud. That's at that point the judge, called a recess, and the family, the wife, I think his wife and his sister were in a witness room outside the courtroom, and so they put him in his witness room, and me and the prosecutor I said, wait, what's wrong with this guy? And the prosecutor didn't know, and so we go to talk to him, like, hey, are you able to, continue? And that's when he basically went to pieces and started convulsing, screaming. It was to the point where it nearly caused a mistrial, because the jury could, everybody in the courthouse could hear it, everybody who was at least on that floor. And so, the wife was saying, call an ambulance. And so the ambulance came, managed to take him out the back door. The media was all waiting for him at the front door. Yeah, that's what happened there. One of the stranger things I've ever seen in court.
At that point, the prosecution became very interested in doing what they could to make this case go away.
So they offered Mr. Irita, the defendant, they offered him assault in the first degree, which downgraded from a murder. It's basically the murder was a Class A felony which carried a life sentence. The assault in the first degree is a Class B felony, but it carries a maximum of 10 years. June Lee had 3 or 4 years down already. So I walked it over with him. He told me, he would take it on the condition that he could plead no contest, because he wasn't going to admit any kind of guilt. So they said, okay, he can plead no contest to assault. And ultimately he took that deal, and the case resolved mid-trial, and he was sentenced to the 10 years, and he's in prison right now.
This did not please anyone. Not the public, not the victim's loved ones, not the media, not the defense, not the prosecution, not even the jury.
No, nobody was satisfied. They were all disgusted.
One member of the jury told Hawaii News Now that they felt justice was not served in this case for Helen. There were so many unanswered questions, and it felt at the end of the day that no one had paid much of a price for killing Helen Prestosa.
I mean, and again, I'm the defense attorney, but it's hard to divorce yourself from the reality of the situation, which is that an innocent person was murdered, and whoever did it, whether it was the defendant or the dad or some other person, whoever did it essentially skated. I mean, that's not something that is lost on me. Nobody thought justice was served. That's, again, in my opinion. It was not the kind of thing you would wish on anybody.
Helen, and those who loved her, deserved better.
For whatever reason, this just doesn't seem to rate on anybody's, maybe it was just the perfect storm of old timers retiring, just sort of stuff falling through the cracks. I mean, it just that might be it. It just kind of all lined up in such a way that, you know, very serious mistakes were made over and over. And hopefully that's the exception to the rule.
Helen Prestosa was a cancer survivor, a provider for her family, a force of nature. And the pain caused by her disappearance has continued to trickle through the years. Speaking to KHON2 News in 2017, Helen's mother said that she keeps a shrine of fresh flowers in her daughter's old room. She cries whenever she waters them. But Helen was also a gay Filipino immigrant working in fast food. Did her identity prompt authorities to get sloppy and bring a shaky case to trial? On-the-stand breakdowns during witness testimony are the stuff of movies and TV shows, but they're a rarity in real life.
And Rivera's actions in court leave us asking the question, with all the circumstantial evidence pointing away from Irarita, is the right man in prison today? Was the accused murderer's reluctance to participate in his own defense a sign of a guilty conscience? Or was Irarita, in his own way, atoning for the years of distress he brought his family? Murder trials are often thought of as a chance to bring clarity to both the public and the loved ones of a victim. But the stream of questions unleashed by Irarita's day in court has left the death of Helen Prestosa as cloudy as the gloom of a hard Honolulu rain.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Murder Sheet. Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
To keep up with the latest on The Murder Sheet, please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Murder Sheet, and on Facebook at MSheet Podcast or by searching Murder Sheet. For exclusive content like bonus episodes and case files, become a patron of The Murder Sheet on Patreon at patreon.com/murdersheet. If you enjoyed listening to The Murder Sheet, please leave us a 5-star review to help us gain more exposure. And send tips, suggestions, and feedback to murdersheet@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.